Forget everything you know about what a top sports car should be and start again. This is, after all, exactly what BMW did with this i8. It's a plug-in petrol-electric hybrid supercar that runs silently on its battery in the morning commute, yet transforms itself into something like a Porsche 911 when you're in the mood. It also looks sensational, feels special, and will slash your running costs to the bone. As a result, this market segment will never be quite the same again. You're looking at the future of sports cars, one that's light, strong, very fast, and more than able to justify its position on the planet. Welcome to BMW's revolutionary i8. It's arguably the most interesting car of any on current sale. Possibly the cleverest and probably one of the most significant, not least in the way it democratises exclusive technology in its segment. Until the i8 arrived in mid-2014, plug-in petrol-electric hybrid sports car motoring required the billionaire's budget needed for ownership of hypercars like the Porsche 918 Spider, the LaFerrari and the mighty McLaren P1. At a stroke, this BMW changed all of that, delivering an equally sophisticated taste of the future, but doing so for realistic Porsche 911 money. It's a future that looks revolutionary, for the i8 sets out to do nothing less than deliver the speed of a supercar with the running costs of a super mini, thanks to a technological CV that even embarrasses the exotic models I've just mentioned. Under the skin lie 2 gearboxes, 3 electric motors and a sophisticated 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. This boosted by a 200-kilogram bank of high-tech lithium-ion batteries and transmitting torque to the tarmac via a 4-wheel drive system. It's all clothed in a lightweight body fashioned from aluminium and the kind of carbon fibre reinforced plastic you'd find in a Formula One racer. Here, in other words, is a machine that makes existing top petrol-powered sports cars look about as cutting edge as a video cassette recorder. This, the second of the Bavarian maker's new generation i-branded models, seems at first glance more of a motor show concept than a production reality. Indeed, for several years, that's exactly what it was. This design, originally introduced, badged as a Vision Efficient Dynamics prototype in 2009, before evolving into road-ready form and being displayed to the crowds at Frankfurt in 2011, just as a purpose-built Leipzig production line was being readied for an exclusive manufacturing run. The development care was crucial, given the boundaries being broken here. This, after all, is the first car BMW has ever developed with plug-in hybrid technology. The i8's mid-engine configuration is almost unique for the brand too, the company's M1 supercar from the late 70s being the only other model the marque has ever made with such a layout. This then is Munich's miracle, and we're going to put it to the test. So, what's it like? It's hard to know exactly what to expect when you raise the dihedral driver's door, ease across the wide sill of the carbon fibre passenger cell and settle yourself into the low, snug cockpit. Already you know the experience to come is going to be rather different, a perception confirmed by the silence that follows a press of the start button. Instead of the V8 or flat 6 roar you expect from a super sports car of this kind, you're merely treated to a series of sci-fi style bleeps and a distant whir from the electric motor up front. Star Trek style graphics spring into life on the virtual instrument screen ahead of you, and strange enviro-conscious jargon references e-boost, e-drive and charge functionality. For all of us who love our cars, this, apparently, is the future. I wonder what's in store. Now, if you're sensing a degree of reticence here, then I'll have to be frank and admit that for someone like me, there's something suspiciously eco-centric about the whole concept of a hybrid petrol-electric sports car like this. It's the kind of technology that's surely very welcome in a green-minded family hatch, like this model's futuristic stablemate BMW's i3. But in a top-performance coupe, its use smacks of political correctness. As enthusiasts, we know what very fast, very rewarding top sports coupe should be like, and we don't really want anyone messing with the concept, thanks very much. Except that the industry already has. The days of those conventional V8s and flat sixes have long been numbered, and hypercars like the McLaren P1, the LaFerrari and the Porsche 918 Spider already all use hybrid power. The game is moving on. To be honest, I hadn't quite realised just how quickly that was happening before trying this car. Here, a tiny 1.5 litre three-cylinder petrol power plant borrowed from the Mini Cooper sits in mid-engine format behind the back seats, turbocharged to push its output up to 231 brake horsepower, and there to drive the rear wheels via a 6-speed auto gearbox. Ahead of you, meanwhile, a tiny 131 brake horsepower electric motor is there to work in concert with old-fashioned fossil fuel, driving charge from a high-voltage lithium-ion battery to power the front wheels through its own dedicated 2-speed auto transmission. Together, the two power sources develop a combined output of 362 brake horsepower, and though that's a little less than the class norm, the hefty 570 Newton-metre torque output is more than enough to take up any slack should you want to go 911 or Maserati chasing. Which you might well do. Snick the auto gear lever to its left-hand sport setting, and as the dashboard graphics flash orange, the engine fires up if it hasn't already, chiming in with power to the rear wheels that supplants the torque already being developed by the electric motor for those at the front. The result is four-wheel drive traction and some serious pep. 62 miles an hour from rest achievable in just 4.4 seconds, on the way to a maximum speed that must be reined in at 155 miles an hour. At the same time, that sport setting firms up the damping, weights up the steering, and carefully tweaks the torque split for maximum entertainment. There's even an artificial roar that's piped in through the speakers and actually sounds rather good. The real test, though, comes on twistier tarmac. There's a reason why hybrids don't tend to appeal to enthusiastic drivers. This one might, though. The ideal near 50-50 weight distribution and the super low centre of gravity virtually eliminate body roll when the variable damper control system firms things up, and with all-wheel drive pinning you to the road, it's very difficult to unstick this thing, even if you're brave enough to disable the traction control system. Especially if, as I would, you tick the box for the optional wider tyres. The ride is also brilliant, less perturbed by bumps and undulations at speed than in any other car in this segment that I've driven. Not quite as good is the steering. As I've said, it gets heavier when you switch to the sport setting, but even here there's less feel than you'd ideally want. In fact, compared with something like a 911 or a Mercedes-AMG GT, there's less seat-of-the-pants interaction, full stop. This isn't really any kind of track day car. Its feedback really more along the lines of the sort of thing you'd get from a grand touring coupe. Put another way, it's more BMW 6 Series than Porsche 911. That's a pity, but it is at least appropriate for the other driving modes this car can offer. Click on the Drive Performance Control rocker switch you'll find on top of the high centre console that houses all those battery cells, and you'll be able to flip out of Sport into either the laid-back Comfort setting this car always starts off with, or conceivably into an enviro-conscious Eco Pro mode. In either case, once you have, the i8 has a rather pleasing habit of continually trying to revert to all-electric propulsion as often as it can, providing your speed's reasonable and the battery has sufficient charge. This also means, of course, that power will be restricted to the electric motor's 131 braked horses, and that you'll be reverting back to front-wheel drive. A rather odd sensation in a BMW sports car. To fix the car in permanent electric mode for as long as the cells hold out, you've to click on this e-drive button, in which case pure electric driving is theoretically possible for up to 23 miles at speeds of up to 75 miles an hour. In this test, I've frequently found a 15-mile range to be a more achievable reality, but with careful driving and better use of the very effective regenerative braking system, I could probably have got closer to BMW's claim. It seems appropriate that such unique engineering should be so uniquely fashioned. Clearly futuristic, it's every inch a BMW. And every inch a sports car with its long wheelbase, short overhangs and solid stance. Even standing still, there's a sense of theatre here, with a riot of complex surface treatments, contrasting colours, sharp creases and scalloped sills. Even in pictures, the effect is stunning, but nothing quite prepares you for your first acquaintance in the metal, or to be more accurate, in the carbon-reinforced plastic. This strong, lightweight material used for both the body panels and much of the structure that lies beneath. Powerfully pretty, the exaggerated wedge shape, the long, drawn-out lines and the flat silhouette deliver a degree of visual drama that no other class rival can match. The nose section's low and wide, with large air intakes arranged over several levels and slim LED headlights linked by the brand's familiar kidney grille. Blanked off, of course, for it serves no practical purpose since no engine lies beneath the sweeping bonnet. BMW i-Model's signature feature is what the Munich maker calls the black belt, a design element that runs from the front, then over the roof to the rear, where it frames the centre section of the rear apron and is overlapped by floating roof pillars that extend over dramatically sculpted and very intricate LED tail lights. Setting this Coupe i8 apart from the equally arresting open-top Spider version of this design is the so-called streamflow contour of the side window styling. It's intended to reflect the path of airflow between the falling roofline and the distinctive character crease that rises across this muscular wheel arch towards the lip of the rear spoiler. This is perhaps the most distinctive feature, though. Dihedral doors are rare enough in automotive design, but these ones are particularly unique, fashioned from aluminium, carbon fibre and thermoplastic, and very light and easy to use. It's all arresting stuff, though even this is not perhaps as dramatic as the design that lies beneath, based around what BMW calls its life drive architecture. Before I get into that, let me explain the problem here. Think of what this car must package up. 2 gearboxes, 3 electric motors, a sophisticated 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine, a 200-kilogram bank of high-tech lithium-ion batteries, and all the associated technology of 4-wheel drive. You don't need to be an engineer to understand what all of that adds up to. Surplus weight. The one thing you don't want in an involving sports car. So this i8 doesn't have it. Instead, the 1,560-kilogram curb weight figure is somehow right on the button against ordinary conventional rivals, directly matching a comparable Porsche 911 and making this car actually considerably lighter than competitors like Jaguar's F-Type R and Maserati's Gran Turismo. It's an astonishing feat that the Life Drive intelligent lightweight design approach makes possible, the name designating the 2 separate platform segments that combine to create the underpinnings of this car. First up is the aluminium drive module that shrouds the combustion engine and electric motor, the battery pack and various power electronics and chassis components. This connects to the separate Life module, the name BMW gives to this i8's CFRP carbon fibre reinforced plastic passenger cell. Now, CFRP is massively stiff and rigid, yet weighs 50% less than steel. Without it, this car's concept simply wouldn't work. Appropriate then that this material is celebrated around the particularly large door apertures that make getting in and out across the broad sills far easier than you fear it might be. Ladies with tight skirts might struggle, but as mid-engine models go, this one's surprisingly user-friendly. The doors themselves are also more practical than you expect, usable even in quite tight spaces, though I'd fear for them in a low-roofed multi-storey car park. In the cabin, you'll find the styling as futuristic as it was outside. The curved, layered dash, made up of overlapping three-dimensional segments and complemented by contrasting colours. You sit low on slender leather sports seats, cocooned in a driver-focused cockpit dominated by two 8.8-inch screens. One of these should at least be familiar to the BMW faithful, a central iDrive infotainment display that sits on the centre of the dash and deals with all the things that don't directly concern the performance experience, like navigation, the stereo system, and the many connected drive technology features this car borrows from its more conventional brand stablemates. More arresting, though, is the display you view through the grippy three-spoke wheel, a sci-fi style layout which delivers range readings for fuel and battery power below two circular digital dials that change in colour depending on the driving mode you select. In the comfort setting, the car always defaults to from rest. The left-hand gauge covers your speed, while that on the right is designated as a power meter and shows you what the electric motor's doing while grading the effect of any regenerative braking. Select the Eco Pro mode and the colours switch from grey to blue as an efficiency display is added. The most radical change, though, comes when you flick the shard-like auto gear stick to the left into the full-on sport setting. Orange dials spring into your view and a rev counter replaces the power meter on the right side of the screen. Not that you'll be looking at it much, as many of the readouts that really matter are duplicated on a head-up display projected into your line of sight at the base of the windscreen. Survey the smooth sweep of the dashboard and the excellent ergonomics clearly bear Munich's mark. True, it's not quite as adventurous an approach as was used in the brand's humbler i3 hatch, and much of the switchgear is recognisable from cheaper models, but the overall ambience is difficult to fault. Recycled textiles and soft, supple leather blending together with a standard ambient lighting system that, if required, can alternate between blue, amber and white. At night, the effect is stunning. On a more practical note, cabin storage space is somewhat limited, not helped by the fact that there are no door pockets. Still, there's a decently sized glove box, a couple of compartments in the centre console, plus a cup holder at the front and two more in the rear. Of more importance, perhaps, is the news that all-round visibility is much better than some rival sports cars provide, helped by a wide rear screen. Talking of the rear, the 2+2 cabin layout means that, as in a 911, but in contrast to, say, a Aston Martin V8 Vantage or a Jaguar F-Type R, you get a couple of extra useful but rather upright chairs. The one behind the driver is of limited use even for a child because legroom is so restricted. The seat behind the front passenger, though, may well prove to be extremely helpful should your i8 be pressed onto the school run, and could even see service for an uncomplaining adult in an emergency. Most of the time, though, these pews will be used for jackets and designer shopping bags. And you may need them, because as with most mid-engine cars, the boot is pretty restricted in size and can also get quite hot due to the proximity of the engine. This trunk is 154 litres in size, just about big enough for an airline carry-on bag and not much else. True, that totals 29 litres more than you get in a rival Porsche 911 Carrera 4, but it's half the luggage space you could have expected had you plumped for direct competitors like Maserati's Gran Turismo or the Mercedes AMG GT. Still, you can make the most of what you have by opting for an exquisitely crafted four-piece Louis Vuitton luggage set shaped to get the absolute maximum from the room on offer. BMW has designed this car in both coupe and spider guises, but it's the fixed-top model that we're focusing on here. You might think that anyone paying a six-figure sum for a supercar would have little need for the government's £5,000 plug-in car grant, but the i8 gets it anyway, meaning that at launch its price was pretty much dead on the £100,000 mark. There's just one plug-in petrol-electric hybrid specification and, for the engine, one auto-only 6-speed paddle-shift gearbox. As for rivals, well, though there are plenty of quite exotic and similarly performing top sports cars you could consider for this kind of money, there's really nothing that masters futuristic technology quite like an i8. I'll give you a quick run through the alternatives to explain what I mean. If you were prepared to consider it, then Audi's R8 e-tron would be an intriguing rival. But there are more limitations when it comes to the range you can travel in the thing between charge-ups. Most would agree that a more realistic alternative can be found in the eco-minded sport hybrid engineering of Honda's NSX, with its 9-speed DSG transmission and 3 electric motors. But that car mates electric drive to a much thirstier twin-turbo V6 and still costs considerably more. These options apart, you've to look at the much greater running costs of old-tech conventional petrol power. If you're prepared to do that and want the same kind of four-wheel drive traction and performance that's on offer here, then probably the closest match can be found in Porsche's 911 Carrera 4 GTS Coupe, which gets within a fraction of this i8's asking price and can even slightly shade it in performance terms. If you can afford to go beyond i8 and 911 GTS C4 money, then another £20,000 gets you the conventionally engined 540 PS V10 Coupe version of the second-generation Audi R8 I was just talking about. Should a six-figure budget prove to be a bit of a stretch, though, then don't worry, because there are two other similarly performing all-wheel drive options in this segment that'll save you a bit over the kind of cash BMW's asking here. Just over £90,000 buys you Jaguar's F-Type R all-wheel drive, while less than £80,000 could get you Nissan's even faster GTR. Both are shatteringly quick. Otherwise, that leaves only a trio of rear-wheel drive top sports coupe contenders. Of these, the most credible is the desirable Mercedes-AMG GT, which, like the 911, gets within a fraction of this i8's asking price, as does the S-Sport Shift Auto version of Aston Martin's V8 Vantage. Equally old school is the Maserati Gran Turismo 4.7 V8, which, with semi-automatic MC shift transmission, gets within around £5,000 of the i8's six-figure starting point. To be frank, though, I can't see anyone who'd really appreciate and seriously want to buy an i8 spending too long credibly considering any of these options. Such a person would probably disparage conventional engine technology and question the way that running costs will enormously increase for buyers choosing anything other than an i8 in this segment. Assuming you're of that mind, then you'll want to know just how much BMW offers to buyers of this car as part of the standard spec. As you'd expect for the asking price, there's quite a lot included. Outside, we'll start with these piercing adaptive LED headlights and these gorgeous 20-inch I-turbine spoke style treble 4 light alloy wheels. The innovative dihedral doors will doubtless be a car park talking point too, while those who look closer will note the carbon fibre style roof, the black brake calipers, and in this case the Sophisto grey metallic paintwork with its contrast accents. Inside there's leather not only for the grippy heated electric sports seats, but also for a dash binnacle that's supplanted by a head-up display projecting key driving information to the base of the windscreen. BMW's drive performance control and variable damper control systems allow you to set the feel of the car up for the road you're on and the mood you're in. And there's a lovely grippy sport multifunction leather steering wheel with gear shift paddles to hold. As usual on BMWs, there's an iDrive infotainment setup, this one with a range of clever connected drive services, including real-time traffic information and various BMW apps. Through iDrive, you also access the brand's professional multimedia navigation system, a setup able to electronically communicate with the powertrain to ensure that your i8's battery power is used as effectively as possible throughout any given trip. There's also a BMW advanced loudspeaker system for the high-quality 7-channel stereo, plus the usual DAB radio, Bluetooth and voice control connectivity you'd expect, along with a 20-gigabyte hard disk drive memory for your media stuff. Power folding mirrors, a keyless starting system, auto headlamps and wipers, all-round parking sensors, 2-zone climate control, an auto-dimming rearview mirror and a Thatcham Category 1 alarm also make the team sheet. The main i8 exterior colour choices, crystal white, iconic silver, protonic blue, or as here, sophisto grey, come with contrasting colour panels in areas like the bonnet. The accent surfaces on the side skirts at the rear and on the front kidney grille surround come in BMW i Blue or frozen grey metallic. As for extra cost features, well, of course, there are plenty. I'd want to go for the larger fuel tank and the wider tyre option that gives you a bit more grip. You may even want to get this rubber fitted to achingly expensive carbon fibre wheels, supposed to save 3 kilograms of weight from each rim. Oh, and you've just got to consider the laser headlamps, which deliver an even brighter and more penetrating brilliant white shine, one able to illuminate your way up to 600 metres down the road, nearly double the range of the standard LED beams. And beyond that, well, I'd also be getting my dealer to demonstrate the high-end 280-watt, 11-speaker Harman Kardon sound system to me. And the rear-view camera would certainly make parking easier. On a less practical note, potential owners will want to peruse the various elements of the Pure Impulse design package. The carom grey perforated leather interior, the amido metallic interior trim you'll also find on the laser engraved door sill finishes, the embossed headrests, the anthracite floor mats, the gear lever finished in deep black ceramic, the high gloss black finished brake calipers and the matte black leather engine cover for the boot. There are also 2 optional futuristic interior design packages to go for if you don't like the standard NASO theme with its worthy focus on recycled materials. The Carpo package gives you a full leather cabin in light or dark shades that makes it feel a little more luxurious. But most desirable is the Halo theme, where exclusive olive-tanned leather is matched with careful blue-stitched contrasting and amido black metallic accents. It'd all be a perfect match for the gorgeous Louis Vuitton luggage set, which includes 4 different bags, exquisitely woven from carbon fibre and shaped to make the best use of the restricted 154-litre boot. I'd be less keen to find the considerable membership fee the Munich maker asks owners to pay to be part of its BMW i Pure Impulse Experience programme. This rather vaguely promises access to a world of inspiration and privilege, with cardholders being regularly presented with new ideas for contemporary living and opportunities to attend unique events. Give that tick box a miss. Safety-wise, the fundamentals of i8 design offer plenty of peace of mind. The CFRP carbon fibre reinforced plastic used in this car's so-called life module passenger compartment is extremely strong, and as it can in the cockpit of a Formula 1 car, is able to survive extremely high impact speeds with hardly any deformation. More familiar features include the expected twin front, side and curtain airbags and Isofix child seat fastenings, plus a dynamic stability control system that oversees DTC dynamic traction control. Then there's an ABS braking system with brake drying, brake fade compensation and brake pre-tensioning features, plus CBC cornering brake control and DBC dynamic brake control. Just in case all of that should fail to keep you from having an accident, standard is an intelligent emergency call system that in the event of a crash will automatically alert the emergency services, giving them your exact GPS location. Could be a lifesaver. You also get dynamic LED brake lights that flash in emergency stops, a hill start assistant that stops you drifting backwards on uphill junctions, tyre pressure monitoring and cruise control with a braking function that'll cut in if you suddenly come across a tailback on the motorway. You can even specify a pedestrian alert sound system that'll warn urban pavement folk of your approach when you're noiselessly creeping along in full electric mode in the town. Most will also want to get their i8 fitted with the driving assistant option, which opens up a number of camera-based support systems. There's surround view and side view with object detection to offer comfort and facilitate parking. The high beam assistant is able to dip your lights at night in the face of oncoming traffic. And the speed limit info feature pictures speed limit signs as you pass them and displays them on the dash. There's also a collision and pedestrian warning with city braking function that, at urban speeds of between 10 and 35 miles an hour, scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential collision hazards. If one is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, then braking will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Ultra-lightweight materials, specific aerodynamic optimization and a comprehensive package of BMW efficient dynamics technologies combine with this car's innovative life-drive vehicle architecture to promise much when it comes to its running cost returns. Just how much is difficult to accurately determine. For a start, the i8's quoted combined cycle fuel economy figure of 134.5 miles to the gallon is clearly a nonsense. But that's not BMW's fault, the reading instead attributable to the shortcomings of an official European NEDC testing procedure that still hasn't worked out how to properly evaluate plug-in hybrid vehicles. You can see the problem the bureaucrats in Brussels face when trying to measure this. Just how do you accurately ascertain the ultimate fuel economy of a car like this? After all, if you had a 10-mile journey to and from work each day and used the car only in full electric mode for your commute, you'd conceivably never put any fuel into it. Or at least you wouldn't, provided you kept out of the sport mode, which keeps the engine running all of the time. Instead, for eco-friendly use, you've to keep the drive performance control system in either its comfort or its Eco Pro setting. In both cases, that'll see the car always looking to try and run on electric power alone, which it can do for about 23 miles at speeds of up to 45 miles an hour. I'd be more likely to select the separate eDrive mode, which gives you the same pure electric range, but raises the maximum speed to 75 miles an hour. In the unlikely event that you were able to do all your running completely using electric propulsion, this would, in theory, according to current NEDC rules, make this i8 capable of an infinite number of miles per gallon. In reality, of course, you're going to need petrol power at some point as part of a total combined fuel and battery range that, frankly, is a bit restricted. BMW claims this can extend to 375 miles and says that in Eco Pro mode over 400 miles is theoretically possible, though for that I reckon you'd have to be driving like Miss Marple. In these films, though, we prefer real-life projections, and based on our experience, even if the 32-litre petrol tank was filled to the brim when you set off and the battery was fully charged, you'd be unlikely to go much further than 250 miles in this car, 300 at the most. Should you be planning a longer trip than that, then this kind of range may not be enough. And for such occasions, the Munich maker operates a program where buyers can borrow a more traditional model for short periods. The scheme involves owners being handed an annual allocation of points that can be redeemed against other cars in the company's lineup for these short-term loans. You may, though, find that you can make the charging process work for you to accommodate lengthier journeys. The standard BMW professional navigation system helps here, analysing every route submitted and communicating with the powertrain to ensure that the electric motor is used throughout the trip as effectively as possible. That might mean, for example, ensuring that the battery has sufficient capacity for urban driving towards your journey's end. If, say, you're attending a business meeting or visiting friends, you might well be able to refresh your i8's battery cells before returning home, for charging doesn't actually take that long. plugged into a domestic socket from empty, around 3 hours would give this car an 80% charge. Back at home, you'll be able to complete that charge more quickly in just 2 hours, provided you've had the foresight to get the Munich maker's 15-amp wall box fitted into your garage. There are two versions, badged Pure or Pro, the latter with a digital touchscreen offering all kinds of functions that help you refine and personalise the process. Talking of charging when parked up at home, you can even buy a solar charging garage, should you happen to live somewhere particularly sunny. That kind of renewable electricity, incidentally, was used to manufacture this car in the first place. Your electricity costs will obviously vary depending on your supplier and when you choose to charge. But as a rough guide, by our calculations, 100 miles of full EV motoring in this car would probably set you back around £8 in electricity charges. For owners really buying into the EV concept, BMW also offers a full roster of what it calls 360-degree electric support services, including public charge point subscriptions and reserved parking at charging stations. You also get a downloadable BMW i Remote app for your smartphone, which tells you how much charge is left in the battery and which, when the car's plugged into the mains, can remotely precondition the climate control system to heat up or cool down the cabin so that you don't have to waste charge doing so once you get on the move. However well organised your personal charging program might be, though, the reality is that the restricted electric-only operating range of this car means that over the course of a typical working week, you're still probably going to be using petrol power for extended periods. Our experience suggests that when that's the case, then a combined cycle return of around 50 miles to the gallon should be achievable on a regular basis. Even in hard driving, I've found it hard to dip too far beneath 40 miles to the gallon, which is astonishing for a car of this kind. In overall terms, if you think of this BMW as costing around half as much to fuel as a conventionally engined rival, then you probably won't be too far from the mark. To give you some perspective, a directly comparable Porsche 911 Carrera 4 GTS PDK, one of the more frugal choices in this class, manages an official 31.0 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, probably more like 20 miles to the gallon in realistic enthusiastic use. It also incidentally chugs out 212 grams per kilometre of CO2. Ah yes, CO2. This i8's 49 grams per kilometre emission reading is as difficult to evaluate in real-world terms as its quoted fuel return. Clearly, when you drive the car in its eDrive pure electric mode, it doesn't put out any CO2 at all. Conversely, if you exhaust the eDrive range and, as most owners will, thrash the thing about on petrol power occasionally, you might easily put out a CO2 figure well into 3 figures. For potential buyers, the important thing is that the government believes the quoted 49 grams per kilometre return, and one of the benefits of that is that you won't have to worry about paying road tax. A much bigger bonus, though, comes with benefit-in-kind taxation, for the penalty you'll have to face here for running a super-fast exotic sports car will be pleasantly low. At the time of this test, the government was looking to rate this BMW in a 9% band, but even with the expected rise in that rate to 11%, you still won't have to find that much more than around £1,000 a year in BIK payments, which is massively less than you'd be faced with when running a conventional rival. I'll try and put that into perspective for you. A 40% taxpayer running an i8 as a company car would save around £1,000 a month over the cost of running a comparable Porsche 911. No matter how much money you have, we're talking there of a statistic that's very difficult to ignore. Residual values are another thing that are tough to calculate when it comes to working out this car's running costs, though the reason here has more to do with the fact that this kind of technology moves so quickly. The best estimates we have at present suggest that this i8 will retain around 55% of its value after the usual standard 3-year, 60,000 mile ownership period. But that figure may end up varying as the plug-in hybrid sports car market matures. This BMW might be a jaw-dropping feat of engineering today, but in 3 or 4 years' time, the game may have moved on. Working in its favour is that many owners of supercars just don't care. They want the latest and greatest, and for many, the i8 is going to represent just that. What else? Well, there's no need to pay the London congestion charge should you ever venture into the capital. And insurance is inevitably a top-of-the-shop Group 50, as with every car in this segment. That only leaves reliability, which might be a cause for concern with so much new technology on board. That's covered by an 8-year, 62,000-mile warranty for the battery pack and an unremarkable 3-year warranty for the rest of the car. You're unlikely to need either package. After all, the basic layout of the 3-cylinder engine used here has been well proven, not only in the Mini, but also in BMW's own 2 Series Active Tourer model. You'll need to fettle your i8 with an intermediate service every 2 years or at just over 18,000 miles, whichever comes first. And regular maintenance costs can be kept down if, as I'd recommend, you opt for BMW's servicing pack at point of purchase. With this, one payment of around £1,000 covers all routine servicing for 5 years. Finally, should you prang those futuristic panels, you'll find that they pop back into place after low-speed impacts. And repair work after a harder hit should be no more expensive than it would be for a conventional rival, despite the high-tech construction. Remember this moment, for it represents a turning point in sports car history. As interpreted by this i8, the concept of high-performance motoring is no longer one of ecological embarrassment, but futuristic fascination. In this model, perhaps more than any other, driving enjoyment and planet-friendly performance at last meet in unison. It's a very special blend. Is this i8 as quick, as responsive, or as ultimately satisfying as, say, an equivalent Porsche 911 or Mercedes-AMG GT? No, it isn't. But it gets closer to that benchmark than I ever thought it would. Closer than a car ever should, that's more than twice as frugal and so much cleaner in emissions that it costs a fraction of the usual rate to tax. Nor is there any reason why in years to come it can't be even better. Its lightness, almost perfect, near 50-50 weight distribution and impressively low centre of gravity could certainly all be tuned to give us more of a B-road brawler, and probably will be. For the time being, though, BMW has created what its customers wanted and shown the rest of the industry just how far behind it is in delivering the future of the sports car. Hybrid power may ultimately be the wrong direction for all our automotive futures, but like it or not, we're going there. So let's have some fun on the way. The i8 brings us that and much more besides. Nothing else I can think of in this segment is so striking, surprising and sensational, yet so ultimately sensible in what it sets out to offer. It's a landmark car, nothing more, nothing less, and an incredible achievement.